Alright nerds, it turns out vampires are real. Or at least 19th century New England really thought they were. I'm not talking about fancy European aristocrats or the Illuminati sipping blood from crystal goblets. I'm talking about dirt farmers in Rhode Island digging up grandma because they thought she was eating the family. And the craziest part? Newspapers covered it like a sporting event. Welcome to the American vampire pandemic, where tuberculosis teamed up with superstition like The Undertaker and Kane, and science took a dirt nap.
It's 1892. In a small Rhode Island town, a group of men stand around a grave. They've been up all night sharpening shovels, whispering prayers, and passing around lanterns. Because tonight, they're going to dig up a vampire. They weren't alone. For nearly a century, Americans, real ordinary Americans, were convinced the dead were coming back to life. This isn't your classroom history. It's gritty, real, and rarely discussed.
1892. Exeter, Rhode Island. The men who were huddled around the grave are determined. They have already buried too many of their own, and tonight, they're finally going to stop it. Because the Brown family is dying one by one, and the townsfolk think they know why. The dead daughter, Mercy Brown, has turned into a vampire. They believe she's crawling out of her grave at night, draining the life from her family, and crawling back in. Which, I mean, if that's true, that's dedication. I can't even get people to text back after 9 p.m. Either way, the townfolk do the only logical thing: dig her up to check and see if she's been munching on them. To understand this mindset, you have to get inside the 19th century mind. People were dying all over New England from a disease called consumption, what we now know as tuberculosis. It made you pale, thin, cough up blood, and basically it turned you into the Walking Dead before you died, except you don't get a fat check from AMC. And when one person in the family got sick, everybody else did too. You know, how diseases spread. Doctors couldn't explain it, churches couldn't stop it, and when reason and religion fail, fear fills the gaps, which explains most problems throughout history. These real-life Minecraft villagers started to believe something was feeding on the living. So the villagers gathered their shovels, grabbed a lantern, and they hiked out to the Brown family plot like a midnight DLC mission. They dig and dig and dig, and eventually they crack open Mercy Brown's coffin. Now this is when things get really weird if they hadn't already. They expected to find a decomposing corpse, because you know that's usually what happens when you've been dead for a couple months. But when they opened it, Mercy's body was almost perfectly preserved. She didn't look like any of the other Brown family members. There was no bloating, no skeletization. Her body was weirdly intact. And her cheeks still had a bit of color, you know, that little rosiness in them. To the villagers, this isn't just suspicious, this is she's definitely undead territory, and they started, I guess, high-fiving, thinking they were right. And then they find what they think is the smoking gun or OJ's gloves. They find blood in her heart and in her liver. To them, this is undeniable proof that she's been sneaking out at night for midnight snacks. To modern science, it's called being stored in a cold tomb during a winter. Obviously, she's not going to be decomposed. Turns out, refrigeration works. Who could have thought that? But these guys, they weren't exactly waiting for a CDC report. So they did what anybody clearly not qualified to handle the supernatural would do. They don't call the Ghostbusters, they don't call the Winchesters. They decide to cut out Mercy's heart, burn it to ashes, mix those ashes into a potion, and make her sick brother drink it. because apparently that was their version of NyQuil. Spoiler alert, it didn't work and he died 2 months later. If you're shocked by this, I don't know any other way to tell you. This wasn't just a one-time thing in Rhode Island either. Cases like this popped up all over New England between the late 1700s and the late 1800s. It was like a low-budget rural vampire cinematic universe. You had people digging up family members, burning organs, turning the remains into medicine, all while local newspapers were reporting like this. And in today's sports section, the Yankees beat Boston, and the Henderson family burned Uncle Jerry's lungs because he was definitely undead. And honestly, part of why the vampire panic lasted so long is because tuberculosis looks like a curse. People wasted away, they were coughing up blood, they stay pale, and often it spread through families like clockwork. There was no germ theory at the time, no antibiotics, everybody was just going off of vibes and fear. So when little Mercy Brown died in January of 1892, and her brother started showing symptoms, the town didn't see, oh, an infectious disease is here. They saw, Mercy's definitely coming back for seconds. And what the town people did next, honestly, it's straight out of a horror movie. But listen, I gotta stop for a second and talk about how completely crazy this is. You're telling me a whole town of grown adults, some of them farmers and shopkeepers, decided, yeah, Grandma's dead, but she's totally coming back from the grave at night and sucking the life out of little Timmy. Better dig her up and stab her in the heart. And nobody paused for a second and thought, maybe she's just dead. This could be something else. I mean, come on. You had tuberculosis. This wasn't some secret vampire conspiracy. It was literally the flu or the COVID of the 1800s, but way sadder. People were pale, coughing up blood, wasting away, and instead of calling a doctor, they called a shovel. A shovel. And don't get me started on the burn the heart and mix it into a drink thing. Okay, who came up with that? Some guy probably read a sketchy pamphlet and was like, oh, science, I'll solve this. But you know what? Meanwhile, little Timmy is chugging Grandma Ash smoothie like it's a protein shake. This is the level of problem solving we're talking about. Dig up the dead, stab it in the heart, burn it, force the living to drink it. Granted, this makes slightly more sense than, take this cocaine, chap, you got ghost in your blood. This is the perfect storm of ignorance, fear, and superstition. And honestly, I kind of respect the dedication. I mean, if you actually thought vampires were real, wouldn't you do everything to stop them? But at the same time, holy hell. Maybe, just maybe, I don't know, clean the sheets, wash your hands, do something to not spread this around. But nope, vampire smoothie, classic choice. All right, let's bring this home because here's the part that blows my mind. This whole digging up the dead thing, it's literally the 1800s version of a TikTok conspiracy theory. Think about it. You've got people seeing symptoms, no one knows the science, no one trusts the experts, and suddenly the answer isn't research or medicine, it's social proof and fear mixing together. Little Mercy dies. Her brother gets sick. The neighbors say, she's a vampire. She's eating them alive. I don't know how they would have sounded back then, but we'll go with it. And suddenly the whole town is agreeing, like, yup, gotta dig up the body, heart goes in the fire, bonus points if we make a smoothie out the ashes. This is exactly how misinformation spreads today. Someone posts a 30-second video claiming something scary, people see it, they panic, they freak out, they take dangerous action, and then they share it with 14 people, and I do it, it works. Boom. An instant viral panic. It's like the chain emails of the early 2000s. Okay, instead of a little dead girl ended up at the end of your bed, it's, we gotta dig up grandma and burn her, she's coming back. It's history repeating itself, just with less powdered ashes and more hashtags. And the wild part is, these townfolk weren't stupid. They were trying to solve a real problem. There was a deadly disease killing their families, they just didn't have the right tools. Instead of doctors or science, they had superstition, folklore, and a shovel. And honestly, in context, you can kind of see the logic. It is absolutely terrifying logic, but logic nonetheless. So next time you scroll TikTok and you see somebody claiming something insane, just remember, people in 1892 Rhode Island were literally stabbing dead bodies in the chest to save their family from imaginary vampires. And somehow, that still makes the internet feel a little less scary, doesn't it? So, what happened to Mercy Brown and her well-intentioned, shovel-wielding neighbors? Well, Mercy, who was already a corpse, she stayed dead. Surprise. Her brother, despite drinking an ash smoothie, he didn't make it, unfortunately, and the rest of the town slowly realized that maybe, just maybe, dead people don't get up and snack on the living. But the panic didn't vanish overnight. Across New England, families dug up loved ones, burned hearts, sprinkled ashes in the hopes of stopping death itself. And newspapers, they chronicled it like primetime drama. In a haunting way, this glimpse into a world where science hadn't caught up is awesome. Fear ran unchecked and superstition was a family heirloom. This is exactly like an episode of Supernatural that I know I grew up watching, but it's awful because it happened to real people. So the next time you hear somebody say, I'm Tim Edward, vampires aren't real, just remember, in 1892, ordinary Americans were standing over graves at midnight, convinced that the dead were walking around. And the dead weren't the only thing they were scared of. Because sometimes, the real horror isn't in a coffin, it's in the mind of the living. And that, my friends, is the terrifying, absurd, unforgettable story of America's last vampire panic. If you've enjoyed this, make sure you like, favorite, subscribe, hype the video, whatever you have to do. Again, I'm going to try to upload every Tuesday, Thursday with some videos on Saturday. Please support the channel if you enjoyed any of this. Other than that, I love you all. Thank you all. Bye.